The teachings you are about to hear center on one of life's most universal questions. What do we do when everything seems to be falling apart? When difficulty surrounds us and we cannot see a way through? The answers offered here are not complicated. They do not require great learning or special abilities. They ask only that you listen with an open heart and perhaps discover what the Buddha himself taught so long ago. That peace is always available to us, not somewhere else, not at some other time, but here and now, in this very breath. Before we begin, feel free to share what time it is and where you're listening from. You don't need to understand everything we explore together tonight. In fact, it is better to simply let the mind drift. We will hear of tigers and travelers, of ancient kings and the passing of the seasons. Each tale is a doorway to the peace that comes when we stop fighting against what is. So settle in. Let your shoulders soften. Take a slow, deep breath. And let's begin our journey together. There comes a time in every life when the world feels as though it is closing in. You may know something of this feeling. Most of us do. It is part of being human. Sometimes circumstances gather around us in ways that feel overwhelming. The path forward becomes unclear. The path backward seems to have faded, and we find ourselves wondering, gently or urgently, what we might do next. The Buddha understood this experience. He spoke often of dukkha, that subtle and pervasive sense of unease that touches human life. He never pretended that existence was without difficulty, or that those who followed his teachings would somehow be spared the struggles we all share. What he offered instead was something both simple and profound, a way of being with difficulty that can transform our experience of it entirely. Pain is certain, he taught, but suffering is optional. This teaching can sound almost impossible when we first encounter it. How can suffering be optional when we are in the midst of hard times? How can we choose peace when circumstances are genuinely challenging? And yet, generation after generation, those who have practiced these teachings have discovered something remarkable. There is a space between what happens to us and how we respond. There is a kind of freedom available even in the most confined of situations. There is, always, honey. Let us explore what this means through a story. It is an ancient tale, told and retold across centuries, shaped by countless teachers to meet the needs of their listeners. Tonight, it comes to you in a form meant to share a simple truth. Even when everything seems difficult, something sweet remains available to us, if only we have the wisdom to taste it. Imagine, if you will, a traveler making his way through a dense and ancient forest. The trees rise tall around him, their canopies so thick that only scattered patches of sunlight reach the forest floor. The air is soft with moisture, rich with the scent of earth and green growing things. Birds call to one another in the branches overhead. Insects hum in the undergrowth. It is a place of quiet beauty, alive with the gentle sounds of nature. The traveler has been walking for many hours. His feet know the rhythm of the path. His mind has settled into that peaceful, contemplative state that comes from sustained movement through nature. He is thinking of nothing in particular. He is simply walking, simply breathing, simply present to the forest around him. And then, gradually, something shifts. A sound reaches his ears. A low rumble, distant at first, but growing closer. The birds fall quiet. The insects cease their humming. Even the leaves seem to still themselves. The traveler turns. Behind him, emerging from the shadows of the forest, is a tiger. A large and powerful creature, its eyes fixed upon him with unmistakable intent. Its muscles ripple beneath its striped coat as it moves steadily forward. Now, there are certain things worth knowing about tigers. They are extraordinarily swift, far faster than any person. And when they are hunting, they are remarkably persistent. The traveler does not pause to consider these facts. His body responds before his mind can form a thought. He runs. He runs as quickly as he can. His heart beats strongly in his chest. His breath comes fast. And still, behind him, the sound of the tiger grows nearer. He can hear its breath now. He can sense its presence drawing close. And then, just when it seems there is nowhere left to go, he sees something. A dark opening in the forest floor. An old well, long abandoned, its wooden cover worn away by time. Without thinking, without hesitation, the traveler moves toward it. He drops into the darkness of the well. For a moment, there is only the sensation of falling. The rush of air. The glimpse of the tiger's paw reaching for the space where he had been just a moment before. The darkness closing around him like a gentle cloak. And then his hand finds something. A root, thick and sturdy, growing from the earthen wall of the well. His fingers close around it. His descent stops. He hangs there, suspended in the soft darkness, his body swaying gently, his breath gradually slowing. He is safe. For now, he is safe. But as his eyes adjust to the dim light filtering down from above, as his heartbeat returns to something like its normal rhythm, he begins to take in his surroundings more fully. He looks up. There, at the opening of the well, is the tiger. Its face peers down at him, eyes gleaming in the shadows. One large paw reaches down, but he is just beyond its reach. Just barely. He cannot climb higher. He looks down. And there, at the bottom of the well, coiled upon the dry earth, is a snake. A great serpent, its scales dark in the filtered light. As he watches, it raises its head, sensing his presence. It stretches upward toward his feet, but it cannot quite reach him. He cannot descend. For a long moment, the traveler simply hangs there, taking in his situation. He cannot go up. He cannot go down. He can only hold on. And then he notices something else. From a small opening in the wall of the well, two tiny shapes emerge. Mice. One with fur as dark as night, one with fur as pale as moonlight. They make their way to where his root meets the wall, and they begin, with their small teeth, to gnaw. He watches them work. He feels, with each tiny movement, the slow weakening of the root that holds him. The dark mouse and the light mouse, working in turns, patient and unhurried. The root will not last forever. The traveler closes his eyes. What does one do in such a moment? Here we pause in our story to consider a teaching. The Buddha once said, "Do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment." This instruction sounds simple, but it contains depths that can take a lifetime to fully appreciate. For what the Buddha was pointing to is this: the only place where life actually happens is now. Not yesterday, which exists only in memory. Not tomorrow, which exists only in imagination. But this breath, this heartbeat, this moment of being alive. When we find ourselves in difficulty, our minds almost always travel elsewhere. We revisit the decisions that led us here, turning them over with regret. We imagine forward into all the things that might go wrong, filling ourselves with worry. We are rarely present to what is actually happening in this moment. And because of this, we miss something important. We miss the honey. Let us return to our traveler. He hangs there in the soft darkness of the well, eyes closed, mind moving through waves of concern. He thinks of his loved ones. He thinks of the road he might have taken, the path that would have led him elsewhere. He thinks of the tiger above and the snake below and the slow, patient work of the mice. But this traveler, we should understand, had encountered the teachings of the Buddha in his years of wandering. He had sat with wise teachers. He had learned, though imperfectly, the practice of bringing the mind back to the present moment. And so, even in the midst of his worry, something within him remembered. He took a breath. A single, conscious breath. He felt the air enter his body. He felt his chest rise and settle. He noticed that, in this exact instant, he was alive. Here, now, breathing. He opened his eyes. The tiger was still there. The snake was still there. The mice were still at their patient work. Nothing external had changed. And yet, something had shifted within him. Because now he was seeing clearly. And what he saw was this. Just beside his face, tucked into a small hollow in the wall of the well, was a beehive. Perhaps it had been there all along. Perhaps he had been too preoccupied to notice. But there it was, golden and glistening. And even as he watched, the movement of the tiger above sent gentle vibrations through the earth and down the walls. The hive trembled softly, and from its waxen cells, honey began to drip. One drop fell near his face. The traveler extended his tongue and received it. Sweetness filled his mouth. For a moment, just a moment, there was nothing else. Not the tiger, not the snake, not the mice or the root or the darkness or the uncertainty. There was only this, the pure golden sweetness of honey on his tongue. And the traveler smiled. How delicious, he whispered to himself. How perfectly, unexpectedly delicious. This is where the story ends. Not with escape, not with rescue, not with the resolution we might expect from such a tale. It ends with a man suspended between uncertainties, tasting honey and finding, in that simple act, a quiet peace. Some listeners, upon hearing this story for the first time, feel curious about what happened next. Did he escape? Did the tiger leave? Did someone come to help him? The story does not tell us. And this silence is itself the teaching. For what the story offers is not a solution to difficulty, but something perhaps more valuable, a way of being with difficulty that transforms our experience of it. Consider what the traveler did not do. He did not spend his time in panic. He did not exhaust himself struggling against what he could not change. He did not fill his mind with regret about the past or fear about the future. Instead, he came fully into the present moment. He noticed what was actually available to him, right here, right now, and he allowed himself to receive it. The honey was always there. It had been there the entire time, but he could only taste it once he became still enough to notice. This is what the Buddhist tradition calls mindfulness. Not a way of escaping difficulty, but a way of being present to life as it actually is, with all its uncertainties and all its sweetness, all its challenges and all its unexpected gifts. The great teacher Thich Nhat Hanh once wrote, "Life is available only in the present moment. If you abandon the present moment, you cannot live the moments of your daily life deeply." The traveler in our story discovered this truth in remarkable circumstances, but the teaching applies equally to our ordinary days. How often do we miss the honey that is there before us because we are too absorbed in worry about tomorrow or regret about yesterday? How often do we fail to taste the sweetness of this moment because we believe that sweetness exists only somewhere else, in some other situation, in some improved version of our lives? Now, let us bring this story gently into our own experience. Most of us will never find ourselves literally suspended in a well, but the essence of the situation is one we may recognize. The tiger above might be the pressures we feel, the demands of daily life, the responsibilities that seem to follow us. It might be a health concern, a relationship that has grown complicated, a loss that stays with us. The snake below might be our worries about what lies ahead, the difficult possibilities we imagine, the uncertainties that wait in the shadows of the mind. And the mice? The dark mouse and the light mouse, working steadily at the root? They are simply time itself. Night and day, hour by hour, moment by moment, carrying us forward. This is part of being human. We are all, in a sense, making our way through uncertain territory. None of us knows exactly what lies ahead. None of us can escape the fundamental tenderness of being alive. The question is not whether we will meet difficulty. We will. The question is how we will be with it when it comes. Will we spend our precious moments in resistance? Will we fill our minds with so much noise that we cannot hear the quiet invitation of now? Or will we learn, as the traveler learned, to notice the honey? Here is something that can take years to fully appreciate. The honey is not rare. It is not scarce. It is not reserved for special occasions or particular people. The honey is present all around us, all the time, available in abundance. We simply overlook it because our attention is elsewhere. The warmth of a blanket on a cool evening, the sound of rain on a roof, the face of someone dear to us, the taste of food when we are hungry, the breath moving in and out of our bodies, moment after moment, sustaining us without any effort on our part. These are not small things. These are the honey of existence, and they are available to us always, if only we have the presence of mind to receive them. The Buddha taught his followers to cultivate something called appreciative joy, a gentle attention to the goodness that exists in each moment. This is not a denial of difficulty. The Buddha never taught denial. He simply recognized that challenge and beauty often exist together, and that we have some choice about where we rest our attention. "Let us rise up and be thankful," he said. "For if we didn't learn a lot today, at least we learned a little. And if we didn't learn a little, at least we didn't get sick. And if we got sick, at least we didn't die. So, let us all be thankful." This is the practice of noticing the honey. Not waiting until circumstances improve. Not postponing appreciation until the tiger wanders away and the snake falls asleep and the mice pause in their work. But finding, in this very moment, something to receive, something to savor, something sweet. How do we actually do this? How do we taste the honey when we are genuinely uncertain, genuinely struggling, genuinely unsure how things will unfold? The practice is simpler than we might expect. It begins with a single breath. When you find yourself caught in difficulty, when the path seems unclear and the options seem few, consider this. Pause. Just for a moment. Let everything else wait. And take one conscious breath. Feel the air entering your body. Feel your chest rise and settle. Notice that you are here, now, in this instant. Present. Alive. Breathing. Then, from this place of gentle presence, look around. Not at the difficulties, not at the problems, not at all the things that feel hard. Look instead for what is good. What is sweet? What is, even in the midst of uncertainty, a quiet gift? Perhaps it is the light in the room. Perhaps it is the presence of a loved one nearby or far away. Perhaps it is simply the fact that you have breath in your lungs, warmth in your body, this moment to rest in. Find the honey and let yourself taste it. This will not make difficulties disappear, but it will do something perhaps more important. It will remind you that you are more than your circumstances, that your capacity for peace is not entirely dependent on external conditions, that even in uncertain times, sweetness remains available to those who remember to look for it. Let us return, one final time, to our traveler. He hangs there in the soft darkness, honey on his tongue, a gentle smile on his face. Above him, the tiger still waits. Below him, the snake still rests. The mice continue their patient work. We do not know how his story unfolds from here. Perhaps he found his way to safety. Perhaps the tiger grew tired and wandered back into the forest. Perhaps the snake, finding nothing of interest, eventually moved on. Perhaps, when the root finally gave way, something unexpected happened, some turn of events that carried him somewhere new. The story does not tell us, and perhaps that is as it should be. For what we do know is this: in that moment, suspended between uncertainties, the traveler found peace. He found it not by escaping his circumstances, but by fully inhabiting them. He found it not by solving his problems, but by softening his resistance to them. He found it by coming into the present moment, noticing what was available, and allowing himself to receive it. And in that peace, whatever came next, he was free. This is the gift hidden in the ancient story. Not a promise that things will always work out as we hope, but something perhaps more valuable, the understanding that peace is possible regardless. That appreciation can exist alongside difficulty, that the honey is always there, waiting for us to taste it. The Buddha himself lived this truth. He faced illness, loss, the approach of his own passing. And through it all, he remained at peace. Not because he had found a way to avoid difficulty, but because he had discovered something deeper than difficulty, something that circumstances could not touch. He called it Nibbana, the unconditioned peace that rests beneath all the changing conditions of life. And he taught that this peace is available to all of us, in every moment, if only we know where to look. It is available to you now, right now, as you listen to these words, as your breath moves gently in and out, as your heart continues its quiet rhythm, the honey is present. The sweetness of existence is all around you, waiting to be noticed, waiting to be received. Will you taste it? Take a moment now to rest in stillness. Feel your breath. Notice your body. Let your awareness settle into this present moment, just as it is. And if you can, find something, one small thing that is sweet. Something to appreciate. Something to receive. Let that sweetness fill you. This is the practice. This is the path. This is the honey that is always, always available. In the story we have just explored, a traveler discovered that even in the most uncertain of circumstances, sweetness could be found. Honey dripping in the darkness. A moment of unexpected grace. But there is another teaching woven through that ancient tale, one we touched upon only briefly. It has to do with the mice. Do you remember them? The dark mouse and the light mouse, working patiently at the root, night and day, hour by hour, never resting. Those mice represent something we all live with, whether we think about it or not. They represent the passage of time, the quiet, steady movement of moments into hours, hours into days, days into years. The gentle but relentless truth that nothing stays the same forever. In the Buddhist tradition, this truth has a name. It is called anicca, or impermanence. And far from being a sorrowful teaching, it is, when truly understood, one of the most liberating insights the Buddha ever offered. All conditioned things are impermanent, he said. When one sees this with wisdom, one turns away from suffering. Let us explore what this means through another story. It is a tale about a ring, a young ruler, and 4 simple words that changed the way he moved through all the seasons of his life. Once, in a kingdom whose name has been forgotten by time, there lived a young ruler who had recently come to power. He was not a bad person, this young man. He was, in fact, quite kind at heart, with a genuine wish to serve his people well. But he was inexperienced. He had grown up in comfort, surrounded by those who anticipated his needs before he could even express them. He had known very little of struggle, very little of disappointment, very little of the way life can sometimes turn in unexpected directions. And so, when things went well in his kingdom, as they often did in those early years, he responded in the way that seemed natural to him. He celebrated. He feasted. He threw grand gatherings and took long holidays and generally enjoyed himself with great enthusiasm. Life was good, and he saw no reason not to revel in its goodness. This, in itself, was not a problem. There is nothing wrong with enjoying times of ease. The Buddha himself taught that joy is a wholesome state, one to be cultivated rather than suppressed. But there was something missing in the young ruler's understanding. He had come to believe, without ever putting it into words, that the good times were simply how life was supposed to be. That prosperity was his natural state, that the sun would always shine, the harvests would always be plentiful, and his days would always unfold with the same pleasant ease he had always known. He had not yet learned that life moves in seasons. And then, as happens to all of us eventually, the seasons changed. It began gradually. A harvest that was less abundant than expected. A trade agreement that fell through. Small difficulties that, one by one, began to accumulate. The young ruler tried to address them as best he could, but he had never developed the skills that difficulty requires. He had never needed to. And then something larger arrived. Perhaps it was a natural disaster. Perhaps it was a conflict with a neighboring land. Perhaps it was simply one of those periods that come to every kingdom and every life, when nothing seems to go as planned, and challenges arise faster than they can be met. The stories differ on the details, but they agree on the result. The young ruler found himself, for the first time, truly struggling. He did not handle it well. At first, he was simply confused. This was not how things were supposed to be. Where had the ease gone? Why had life turned against him? He looked for someone to blame, some mistake that could be identified and corrected, some enemy who could be confronted and defeated. But the difficulties he faced were not so simple. They were woven into the fabric of circumstances, arising from causes too numerous and complex to untangle. His confusion turned to frustration. His frustration turned to something darker. He withdrew from his advisors. He neglected his duties. He spent long hours alone in his chambers, caught in loops of regret and worry, unable to see any way forward. His people began to suffer, not only from the difficulties themselves, but from the absence of leadership that might have helped them navigate those difficulties together. It was, by any measure, a crisis. Now, the young ruler was fortunate in one respect. Among his advisors were several individuals of genuine wisdom. They had served his family for generations, and they cared deeply about both the kingdom and the young man who now led it. But they faced a delicate problem. A ruler, even a struggling one, does not easily accept instruction. There is something in the nature of authority that makes it difficult to receive advice directly, especially when that advice touches on personal shortcomings. If they approached him with lectures or criticism, he would likely retreat further into himself. The walls around his heart would only grow higher, and so they decided on a different approach. They would offer him a gift, something simple, something he could carry with him always, something that would speak its wisdom quietly, in its own time, when he was ready to hear it. They commissioned a ring. It was not an elaborate ring, not encrusted with jewels or carved with intricate designs. It was simple, elegant, made of a metal that would endure. And on the outside of the band, in letters small enough that only the wearer would notice them, they inscribed 4 words, "This too will pass." They presented it to the young ruler with great ceremony, explaining only that it was a gift meant to guide him through all the seasons of his reign. They asked him to wear it always and to look at it whenever he felt lost. He accepted it, somewhat puzzled by its simplicity, but moved by the obvious care behind the gesture. He placed it on his finger and, in time, almost forgot it was there, until the day he remembered. It happened during one of his darkest moments. The difficulties had not yet resolved. If anything, they had deepened. The young ruler sat alone, overwhelmed by the weight of all that had gone wrong, all that might still go wrong, all the ways he had failed to be the leader he had imagined he would be. In his despair, he happened to glance down at his hand. And there was the ring, glinting softly in the lamplight. And there were the words, almost too small to read, "This too will pass." He stared at them for a long moment. This too will pass. Something shifted in him. Not a dramatic transformation, not a sudden lifting of all his burdens, but something quieter. A small opening, a crack in the wall of his despair through which a slender ray of light could enter. Of course, he thought. Of course this will pass. Everything passes. The good times he had known had passed, had they not? Why should the difficult times be any different? It was such a simple insight. And yet it changed everything. Because suddenly, the difficulties he faced were no longer permanent fixtures of his existence. They were weather. They were seasons. They were conditions that had arisen and that would, in time, change into other conditions. He did not know when. He did not know how. But he knew, with a certainty that settled deep into his bones, that they would not last forever. Nothing does. And with that knowing came something unexpected: energy, courage, the willingness to try again, to face the challenges before him, to do what could be done without being crushed by the enormity of what could not. He rose from his chair. He called his advisors together, and slowly, imperfectly, with many setbacks along the way, he began to lead again. The difficulties did pass, eventually. Not all at once, not without effort, but they passed. And the young ruler emerged from that season changed, deepened, wiser in ways that comfort could never have taught him. But the story does not end there, because the ring had more to teach him than how to endure difficult times. Years later, when prosperity had returned to the kingdom, when the harvests were plentiful again, and the people were content, and life had resumed its pleasant ease, the ruler happened once more to glance down at his hand. This too will pass. He paused. The words, he realized, applied equally to the good times. The abundance he now enjoyed, the peace, the sense of accomplishment and security, none of it was permanent. It too was weather. It too was a season. It too would, in time, give way to something else. Now, one might think this would be a discouraging realization. If even the good times will pass, what is the point of enjoying them? But the ruler discovered something different. Knowing that the good times would pass did not diminish his enjoyment of them. It deepened it, because now he was paying attention. Now he was present. Now he understood, in a way he never had before, that each moment of ease was precious, precisely because it would not last forever. He began to savor his blessings rather than taking them for granted. He noticed the beauty of his gardens, the warmth of his friendships, the simple pleasure of a meal shared with those he loved. He expressed gratitude more freely. He was kinder to those around him, knowing that his time with them was limited, as all time is limited. And he worked harder to protect and extend the good times, not out of fear, but out of appreciation. He prepared for future difficulties while the preparing was easy. He built reserves, strengthened relationships, addressed small problems before they could become large ones. He became, in short, a wiser and more attentive steward of his kingdom and his life. All because of 4 words on a simple ring. This story has been told in many forms across many cultures. There are versions from ancient lands to the east, versions from kingdoms to the west, versions that feature different rulers and different circumstances, but always the same essential teaching. And the teaching is simply this: everything changes. This is not a pessimistic observation. It is not a call to detachment or indifference. It is simply a clear seeing of the way things are. The Buddha spoke of this truth throughout his teaching life. He invited his followers to observe impermanence everywhere, in the rising and setting of the sun, in the growth and decay of plants, in the arising and passing of thoughts and feelings, in the ceaseless movement of breath in and out of the body. All formations are impermanent, he said. All formations are unsatisfying. All things are without permanent self. These three characteristics, known as the three marks of existence, form the foundation of Buddhist understanding. And of the three, impermanence is perhaps the most immediately observable. We do not need to take it on faith. We can see it for ourselves, in every moment, if we are willing to look. The breath you are taking right now will soon be complete. The thought you are thinking will soon give way to another thought. The feeling in your body, whatever it may be, will shift and change as all feelings do. This too will pass. For those in the midst of difficulty, these words offer profound comfort. Whatever you are facing right now, however hard it may seem, it is not permanent. It is a season. It is weather. It will change, as all things change, in its own time and in its own way. You do not need to know when or how. You need only hold the truth of it in your heart and let it be a light in the darkness. The great Zen teacher Shunryu Suzuki once said, "Without accepting the fact that everything changes, we cannot find perfect composure." But unfortunately, although it is true, it is difficult for us to accept it. Because we cannot accept the truth of impermanence, we suffer. The ring offers us a way to accept this truth gently, not through philosophical argument, but through simple remembrance. When we are struggling, we look at the ring, or we call its words to mind, and we remember, this too will pass. And for those in times of ease, the words offer something equally valuable, a call to presence. Do not sleepwalk through your blessings. Do not take for granted the good that is here now. Do not postpone appreciation until some future moment that may never arrive. Instead, wake up to this moment. Notice what is beautiful. Receive what is given. Let gratitude fill your heart, because this too will pass. The laughter of children grows up and moves away. The strength of the body softens with age. The people we love will not be with us forever, nor we with them. This is not morbid. This is simply true. And holding this truth gently, without fear, allows us to love more fully, live more deeply, and appreciate more completely the extraordinary gift of being alive. You do not need a physical ring to carry this teaching with you. The words can live in your heart. They can become a quiet companion, available whenever you need them. In moments of difficulty, when despair whispers that things will never improve, you can call them to mind. This too will pass. In moments of joy, when the temptation arises to take your blessings for granted, you can call them to mind again. This too will pass. Some people find it helpful to write the words somewhere they will see them often. On a small card kept in a wallet, on a note beside the bed, on the background of a phone. The form does not matter. What matters is the remembering. And with remembering comes a kind of equanimity. Not indifference, not detachment, but a deep and settled peace that is not disturbed by the changing circumstances of life. The Buddhists call this upekkha, often translated as equanimity or balance. It is the capacity to remain centered in the midst of change, to meet both joy and sorrow with an open heart, to neither grasp at what is pleasant, nor push away what is painful. This is what the ring taught the young ruler, and it is what it can teach us if we are willing to receive its simple wisdom. As you rest here now, listening to these words, consider for a moment the seasons you have already lived through. There have been times of ease, surely. Periods when life felt light, when things fell into place, when happiness came readily. Perhaps you are in such a time now, and there have been times of difficulty. Periods when the path was unclear, when burdens felt heavy, when you wondered how you would find your way. Perhaps some of those times felt endless while you were living them. And yet, here you are, on the other side. They passed. As all things pass, and there will be more seasons to come. More times of ease, more times of challenge, more unexpected turns in the road. This is not something to fear. It is simply the nature of a human life, the nature of all life. The great wheel turning as it has always turned, carrying us through changes we cannot predict toward destinations we cannot see. What we can do, what the ring invites us to do, is hold it all with a little more grace. To not be so shaken by difficulty, knowing it will pass. To not be so attached to ease, knowing it will pass as well. To meet each moment as it comes, with presence and appreciation, and a heart that remains open through all the changes. This is not easy. It is, in fact, the work of a lifetime. But it begins simply, with 4 words held gently in awareness. This too will pass. Take a moment now to rest with this teaching. Feel the breath moving through you, arising and passing, arising and passing. Notice whatever you are experiencing in this moment, pleasant or unpleasant, or somewhere in between, and hold it gently, knowing that it too will change. You are part of the great river of impermanence, flowing with all beings, all things, all moments. And in that flowing, there is peace. Rest here as long as you wish. And when you are ready, we will continue together. We have been exploring in these teachings what it means to find peace when life becomes challenging. We have tasted honey in the midst of uncertainty. We have learned that all things pass, the difficult and the beautiful alike. But there is another question that often arises when we find ourselves in hard times. It is a very practical question, one that the mind returns to again and again when circumstances feel overwhelming. The question is simply this: what should I do? When we are surrounded by difficulty, when the path forward is unclear, when every option seems to lead somewhere we do not wish to go, the mind naturally seeks action. It wants to solve, to fix, to fight its way through. There is an urgency that rises in us, a restlessness that insists we must do something, anything, to change our situation. And sometimes action is exactly what is needed. Sometimes there is a clear step to take, a door to walk through, a word to speak that will shift things in a helpful direction. But sometimes there is not. Sometimes we find ourselves in circumstances where no action is available, where every direction is blocked, where the only thing we can do is wait. This is one of the most difficult experiences for a human being. We are creatures of action. We are built to respond, to move, to engage with our environment. Stillness in the face of difficulty can feel almost unbearable. And yet, the wisdom traditions of the world, including including the Buddhist path, have long recognized that sometimes stillness is not merely acceptable, it is the wisest possible response. Do not underestimate the power of patience, the Buddha taught. Water is soft and yielding, yet it wears away stone. Let us explore what this patience looks like in practice, through a story about a small group of travelers who found themselves in an impossible situation, and the unexpected wisdom that saved them. There is a story passed down through generations about a group of travelers making their way through a vast and unfamiliar wilderness. The details of the story vary in different tellings. Some say it took place in a dense forest. Others speak of mountain passes shrouded in mist. Still others set it in a wide and trackless desert. But the essence remains the same. The travelers had set out on a necessary journey, crossing through territory that was known to be difficult. They were not foolish. They had prepared as well as they could, brought supplies, studied the paths. But the wilderness is vast, and even the most careful preparation cannot account for everything. As they made their way deeper into the unknown land, they gradually became aware that they were not alone. There were others in this wilderness, others who did not wish them well. Whether these were bandits or hostile strangers or simply the dangers that wild places hold, the stories do not say precisely. What they agree on is this: the travelers found themselves, quite suddenly, surrounded. There was no way forward. The path ahead was blocked. There was no way back. The path behind had closed. To the left and to the right, the same. Danger on every side, pressing in closer with each passing moment. The travelers gathered together in a small clearing, taking stock of their situation. It was, by any reasonable assessment, dire. They were outnumbered. They were in unfamiliar territory. They had limited resources, and the circle around them was tightening. Among the travelers was a young man whose heart burned with a fierce energy. He was not a coward. When he looked at the situation before him, he felt something rise up in his chest, a powerful instinct that demanded action. His muscles tensed. His mind raced through possibilities. Every fiber of his being screamed that they must do something. "We should try to break through," he said to the others, his voice tight with urgency. "If we move quickly, if we take them by surprise, perhaps some of us can make it. It is better than simply waiting here to be overcome." There was courage in his words, a willingness to face difficulty rather than submit to it. In many situations, such courage would be exactly what was needed. But the leader of the group, an older traveler who had seen many difficult situations in a long life, shook his head gently. "No," he said. "We will not try to break through." The young man stared at him in disbelief. "Then what will we do? Simply wait here until all is lost?" The older traveler looked at him with calm eyes. Eyes that had known fear and had learned to see beyond it. Eyes that held a wisdom earned through many seasons of living. "We will wait," he agreed. "But not in the way you imagine. Sit down, all of you. We are going to rest." And then he said something that seemed, in that moment, utterly incomprehensible. "Let us make some tea." The young man thought he must have misheard. Tea? They were surrounded by danger, their situation growing more precarious by the moment, and the leader wanted to make tea? He looked around at the other travelers, expecting to see his own disbelief reflected in their faces. And he did see it in some of them. But in others, he saw something different. A kind of trust. A willingness to follow this strange instruction even when it made no sense. Slowly, reluctantly, the travelers began to settle. Someone brought out a small pot. Someone else gathered what water they had. The materials for a simple fire were assembled, and soon a small flame was burning in the center of their circle. The young man sat with the others, but his body remained tense, his eyes darting toward the edges of the clearing, his mind still racing through plans of action. This was madness, he thought. This was surrender disguised as wisdom. They should be doing something, anything, not sitting here calmly as if they had all the time in the world. And yet, something began to shift. As the water heated and the familiar rituals of tea-making unfolded, a strange calm settled over the group. The panic that had gripped them began to loosen its hold. Breathing slowed. Shoulders relaxed. The wild energy of fear gave way to something quieter, something more grounded. The young man found himself watching the steam rise from the pot. Found his own breath deepening without conscious effort. Found the racing of his mind gradually slowing to a gentler pace. It was, he would later reflect, one of the most peculiar experiences of his life. Sitting in the midst of danger, surrounded on all sides, sipping tea as if they were resting in a garden on a peaceful afternoon. And then something happened. One of the travelers, whose role it was to observe their surroundings, returned to the circle with news. He spoke quietly into the leader's ear, and the leader nodded slowly. Then the older traveler rose to his feet and addressed the group. "The way has opened," he said simply. "Those who surrounded us have moved. There is a path through. Gather your things quickly and quietly. We can go now." The travelers moved swiftly, gathering their belongings, extinguishing the small fire. Within moments, they were ready. And then, in single file, following the observer who knew the way, they slipped through the gap that had appeared in the circle around them. They moved in silence, with careful steps, and one by one they passed beyond the danger and into safety. When at last they emerged on the other side, when the wilderness opened before them and the path to their destination lay clear, the young man found himself trembling. Not with fear, but with something like wonder. They had done nothing. They had fought no battle, attempted no desperate escape. They had simply sat. They had waited. They had trusted that the situation would change. And it had. The young man approached the older traveler when they had made camp that evening, safe at last. "I do not understand," he said. "How did you know? How could you possibly have known that waiting would save us?" The older traveler smiled gently. "I did not know," he said. "Not with certainty. But I have learned something in my years of traveling through difficult places. Situations change. They always change. What seems fixed and permanent is actually always in motion. The question is whether we have the patience to wait for the change and the awareness to recognize it when it comes." He paused, looking into the fire. "When we are gripped by fear," he continued, "when panic has hold of us, we cannot see clearly. Our vision narrows. We notice only the danger, only the obstacles, only the walls that surround us. We become blind to the gaps, the openings, the small opportunities that may exist even in the most difficult situations." The young man nodded slowly, beginning to understand. If we had tried to fight our way through, the older traveler said, we would have exhausted ourselves. We would likely have been overcome. And even if some of us had survived, we would have been weakened, wounded, less able to continue our journey. Instead, we waited. We calmed ourselves. We gathered our strength. And when the opening appeared, we were ready. We could move quickly and quietly, with all our energy intact. The waiting was not inaction. It was preparation. This story carries a teaching that the Buddha himself emphasized throughout his life. There is a quality of mind, he taught, called khanti in the ancient language. It is usually translated as patience, but it means something deeper than simply waiting passively for time to pass. It is a kind of endurance that is rooted in wisdom, a willingness to be present with difficulty without being overwhelmed by it, a capacity to remain centered and clear even when circumstances are challenging. Patience is the highest practice, the Buddha said. Patience is the greatest strength. This is not the patience of resignation or despair. It is not giving up. It is rather a recognition that not all moments call for action. That sometimes the wisest response is to conserve our energy, maintain our awareness, and wait for the right moment to move. The Taoist tradition, which shares much wisdom with Buddhism, speaks of this as Wu Wei, often translated as non-action or effortless action. It does not mean doing nothing. It means not forcing, not pushing against the current of events, allowing things to unfold in their natural way and responding appropriately when the time is right. Water, as the Tao Te Ching reminds us, does not fight the rocks in its path. It flows around them, and over time it wears them smooth. There is a simple teaching that emerges from this story, one that can be carried into daily life. When there is something to do, do it. Give it your full attention, your complete energy, your wholehearted effort. But when there is nothing to do, do nothing. Rest. Gather your strength. Trust that the situation will change, because situations always change. And be ready to act when action becomes possible. This sounds simple, but it is one of the most difficult practices for human beings. We are so conditioned to action, so uncomfortable with stillness, that we often exhaust ourselves pushing against circumstances that cannot be moved. We wear ourselves out fighting battles that cannot be won, trying to force open doors that are not yet ready to open. And when, finally, the moment for action arrives, we are too depleted to respond. The travelers in our story understood this. By sitting down, by making tea, by allowing themselves to rest even in the midst of danger, they preserved their energy. They maintained their clarity. They kept their awareness sharp and their bodies ready. And when the gap appeared, they were able to move through it. There is something beautiful about the specific instruction in this story. Not simply to wait, but to make tea. Tea, in many contemplative traditions, is more than just a beverage. It is a practice, a ritual of presence, a way of bringing full attention to a simple act and, through that attention, calming the mind and settling the heart. The great Zen tradition has developed this into a formal practice, the way of tea, in which every movement, every gesture, every moment of the preparation and drinking of tea becomes an opportunity for mindfulness. But one does not need to study formal tea ceremony to receive this benefit. Simply making a cup of tea with full attention, noticing the warmth of the cup in your hands, the steam rising, the aroma reaching your senses, the taste on your tongue. This can be a profound act of presence. When we are caught in difficulty, when worry has hold of us and we do not know what to do, sometimes the kindest thing we can offer ourselves is a simple ritual of care. Making tea, preparing food, taking a slow walk, sitting quietly and watching the breath. These acts are not avoidance. They are not pretending that difficulty does not exist. They are, rather, a way of grounding ourselves in the present moment, calming the agitation of the mind, and creating the conditions for clarity to arise. From that place of clarity, we can see more truly. We can notice what is actually happening rather than what we fear might happen. We can perceive the gaps, the openings, the possibilities that are invisible to a panicked mind. And when the moment for action comes, we are ready. It takes courage to be still when everything in us is screaming for action. The young man in our story felt that courage was about fighting, about doing something bold and dramatic in the face of danger. And there are certainly times when that kind of courage is needed. But there is another kind of courage, quieter and perhaps more difficult, which is the courage to wait, the courage to trust, the courage to remain present with uncertainty without grasping for premature solutions. The Buddha sat beneath the Bodhi tree through a long night of difficulty. Visions arose that tempted him. Fears arose that threatened him. The desire to move, to flee, to do something must have been immense. But he remained still. He breathed. He stayed present. And in that stillness, liberation came. We are not all seeking the same liberation the Buddha found, but we can all learn from his example. Stillness is not weakness. Patience is not passivity. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is simply stay where we are, breathe, and trust that the way will open. As you move through your life, you will encounter many situations that feel like being surrounded in the wilderness. There will be times when every direction seems blocked, when you cannot see any way forward, when the mind insists that you must act, must fight, must do something, even though no clear action is available. In those moments, remember the travelers, remember the tea. You do not need to have a solution to every problem immediately. You do not need to force your way through every obstacle. Sometimes the wisest, kindest, most effective thing you can do is simply pause, breathe, rest. Take care of yourself in small, simple ways, and wait. The situation will change. It always does. The circle that surrounds you will shift. A gap will appear. And when it does, if you have been patient, if you have conserved your energy, if you have kept your awareness clear, you will be ready to move through it. This too is part of the path. This too is practice. This too is wisdom. Take a moment now to rest in stillness. Feel the simple rhythm of your breath. Notice the quiet miracle of being alive in this moment. There is nowhere you need to go right now, nothing you need to do. Simply rest here, in the warmth of this pause, like travelers gathered around a small fire, waiting for the way to open. When you are ready, we will continue our journey together. In the story we have just explored, we learned something about patience. about the wisdom of stillness when action is not yet possible, about trusting that situations change and preparing ourselves to move when the way opens. But there is another dimension to this teaching that we have not yet touched upon. It has to do not only with how we hold our own difficulties, but with how we hold the difficulties of others. Because we do not live in isolation. We are woven into the lives of those around us. Family, friends, colleagues, neighbors, strangers we encounter in the course of our days. And when those we care about are struggling, when they come to us with their burdens, their worries, their pain, we naturally wish to help. This is one of the most beautiful qualities of being human. The capacity for compassion, the willingness to be present with another person's suffering, the impulse to offer comfort, to listen, to share the weight of what someone else is carrying. The Buddha spoke often of compassion as one of the 4 immeasurable qualities of an awakened heart. Karuna, he called it, the trembling of the heart in response to suffering, the wish that all beings might be free from pain. Just as a mother would protect her only child with her life, he taught, even so let one cultivate a boundless love toward all beings. This teaching is beautiful and true. And yet, for those who take it seriously, who genuinely open themselves to the pain of others, there is a danger that is not always spoken of. The danger is that we may become so full of what we have received that we have no room left for ourselves. That we may accumulate the sorrows of others until we are weighed down by a burden that was never ours to carry. That we may, in our sincere wish to help, lose ourselves in the process. Tonight, let us explore a different way. A way of compassion that does not deplete. A way of receiving that does not accumulate. A way of being present to the suffering of others while remaining grounded in our own peace. There is a story told about a person whose role it was to listen. This person had, over many years, developed a reputation for kindness. When people were struggling, when they did not know where else to turn, they would come and sit with this listener and pour out their hearts. The listener would receive them with patience and warmth, offering no judgment, no hurried advice, simply a steady and compassionate presence. Word spread, as it does in such cases, and more people came. Those who were grieving, those who were afraid, those whose relationships had fractured, whose plans had failed, whose hearts were heavy with regrets they could not release. They came in a steady stream, day after day, each one carrying a weight that needed to be set down, even if only for a moment. And the listener received them all. It was sacred work in its way. To be trusted with someone's deepest pain is no small thing. To create a space where another person feels safe enough to speak the unspeakable. To bring into the light what has been hidden in shadow. This is a profound gift. But the listener began to notice something troubling. After each conversation, something of what had been shared seemed to linger. The words of sorrow, the images of difficulty, the emotional weight of what had been expressed. These did not simply vanish when the person left. They seemed to settle somewhere inside the listener, accumulating like sediment at the bottom of a still pond. At first, it was barely noticeable. A slight heaviness after a particularly difficult conversation. A tendency to carry thoughts of others' troubles into the evening hours. A growing difficulty in finding the lightness that had once come so naturally. But over time, the weight grew. The listener found it harder to sleep, harder to feel joy. harder to be present even for the small pleasures of daily life. It was as if a great vessel had been slowly filling, drop by drop, with the sorrows of everyone who had come to pour out their hearts. And now the vessel was nearly full. This experience has a name in the modern world. It is sometimes called burnout, sometimes called compassion fatigue. It is the exhaustion that comes from giving too much without replenishing, the emptiness that follows when we have poured ourselves out for others without attending to our own needs. It is remarkably common among those who care for others. Healers, caregivers, counselors, parents, friends who are always the ones others turn to in times of need. The very qualities that make someone a good listener, the openness, the sensitivity, the genuine care, can also make them vulnerable to this accumulation of unexpressed weight. The listener in our story had reached this point. The vessel was full. There was no room left to receive. And yet the people kept coming, because their needs did not pause simply because the listener was tired. It was in this state of exhaustion that the listener sought out a teacher, an old friend who had walked a similar path many years before and had somehow learned to sustain the work without being consumed by it. "I do not know how to continue," the listener confessed. "I want to help. I believe this work matters, but I am so full of other people's pain that I cannot find my own peace. How do you do it? How do you receive so much suffering without drowning in it?" The teacher listened quietly, a gentle smile playing at the corners of their eyes. When the listener had finished speaking, the teacher was silent for a long moment. Then, in a soft voice, the teacher offered a teaching that would change everything. "You have been trying to be a vessel," the teacher said, "a container for the sorrows of others. You have opened yourself to receive, and you have received abundantly. This is good. This is compassion in action." The listener nodded, waiting. "But you have made one mistake," the teacher continued. "You have tried to be a vessel with a solid bottom. You have tried to hold what has been poured into you. And so it has accumulated layer upon layer until now you are so full that you cannot receive any more. What should I do?" the listener asked. "Stop receiving? Turn people away?" The teacher shook their head gently. "No, keep receiving, but change the kind of vessel you are. Instead of a vessel with a solid bottom, become a vessel with an opening at the base. Let what comes in flow through you. Receive it fully. Be present to it completely, but do not hold on to it. Let it pass." The listener frowned, trying to understand. "When someone shares their sorrow with you," the teacher explained, "you do not need to keep it. It is not yours to carry. Your role is simply to receive it for a moment, to be present with it, to offer the gift of your attention and your care. And then, when they leave, let it go. Let it flow out of you, as naturally as it flowed in." "But how?" the listener asked. "How do I let it go when it feels so present, so real?" The teacher smiled. "By remembering that it was never yours. You did not create this pain. You cannot solve it. You can only be present with it. And presence does not require possession. You can be fully here with someone suffering without taking that suffering into yourself." This teaching is one of the most important for anyone who wishes to sustain a life of compassion. It is not about becoming cold or detached. It is not about caring less. It is, paradoxically, about caring more freely. When we are not burdened by the accumulated weight of what we have received, we have more capacity to be present, more energy to offer, more spaciousness in which others can rest. The Buddha spoke of this quality when he taught about equanimity, the fourth of the immeasurable qualities of the heart. Upekkha, he called it. It is often misunderstood as indifference, but it is something quite different. It is the capacity to remain balanced, centered, at peace, even while being fully present to the joys and sorrows of the world. As a solid rock is not shaken by the wind, the Buddha said, so the wise are not moved by praise or blame. This steadiness is not a closing of the heart. It is, rather, the ground from which true compassion can flow. When we are not shaken by what we encounter, we can be more truly present to it. When we are not overwhelmed, we can offer more genuine help. The listener in our story began to practice this teaching. It was not easy at first. The habit of holding was deeply ingrained. But slowly, with patience and attention, a new way of being began to emerge. When someone came to share their sorrow, the listener would receive it fully. Complete attention, complete presence, complete care. But as the conversation ended, as the person rose to leave, the listener would consciously release what had been shared, not pushing it away, not denying it, but simply letting it flow through and out, like water through a vessel with an opening at the base. At first, the listener would forget and find the familiar weight accumulating again. But with practice, the release became more natural. And gradually, something remarkable happened. The listener found more energy, not less. More capacity for presence, not less. More genuine care to offer, not less. Because the vessel was no longer full, there was always room to receive. And because receiving did not mean accumulating, the work could continue without the slow drowning that had threatened before. There is a simple truth at the heart of this teaching. The sorrows that others share with us are not ours. We did not create them. We cannot solve them. We can only be present with them. This is not a limitation. It is a liberation. When we truly understand that we are not responsible for fixing everyone's pain, that our role is simply to offer presence and care, a great weight lifts from our shoulders. This does not mean we do not help in practical ways when we can. Of course we do. If someone is hungry, we offer food. If someone needs assistance, we lend our hands. Compassion naturally expresses itself in action when action is possible. But even as we act, we can hold lightly. We can offer what we have to offer without attaching to outcomes. We can care deeply without losing ourselves in the caring. The Zen tradition speaks of this as being like a mirror. A mirror reflects everything that comes before it, fully and completely, hiding nothing, distorting nothing. But the mirror does not hold on to what it reflects. When the object moves away, the reflection is gone. The mirror remains clear, empty, ready to receive the next thing that appears. This is what it means to be a vessel with an opening at the bottom. To receive fully, to reflect truly, and to let go completely. There is a beautiful image in the Buddhist tradition of the Bodhisattva, the awakened being who dedicates their life to the liberation of all beings. The Bodhisattva is said to have boundless compassion, an inexhaustible wish for the happiness of all. How is such boundless compassion possible? How can anyone care infinitely without being consumed? The answer lies in the nature of the caring itself. The bodhisattva does not hold on to the suffering they encounter. They do not accumulate it, store it, carry it around like a burden. They are present to it, fully and completely, and then they let it pass through. This is why the great compassionate ones throughout history have been able to give so much without running dry. Their compassion flows from a source that is never depleted because they do not try to hold on to what moves through them. They are like rivers, always receiving, always giving, always flowing. In the end, taught the Buddha, only 3 things matter: how much you loved, how gently you lived, and how gracefully you let go of things not meant for you. The sorrows of others, however deeply we feel them in the moment of receiving, are ultimately not meant for us. They belong to the people who carry them. Our gift is presence, not possession. Our offering is attention, not accumulation. There is one more dimension to this teaching that deserves our attention. The practice of letting through is not only an act of wisdom, it is also an act of kindness toward ourselves. So often, those who care for others neglect their own care. They give and give, pouring themselves out, believing that their own needs are less important, that self-care is somehow selfish. They wear their exhaustion as a badge of honor, proof of how much they love. But this is not sustainable. And more than that, it is not true compassion. The Buddha taught that we should treat all beings with loving kindness, and he was clear that all beings includes ourselves. We are not exempt from our own care. We are not meant to be vessels that only give, never receiving. We are part of the web of compassion, both giving and receiving, breathing out and breathing in. When we practice letting through, when we allow the sorrows we receive to flow out of us rather than accumulate, we are offering ourselves the same kindness we offer others. We are saying, my peace matters too. My well-being matters too. I can care for others and also care for myself. This is not selfish. It is necessary. It is the foundation on which sustainable compassion is built. As you continue your own journey, as you encounter the joys and sorrows of those around you, consider what kind of vessel you wish to be. You can be a vessel with a solid bottom, holding everything that is poured into you, accumulating weight until you can barely move. Many people live this way, and they suffer for it. Or you can be a vessel with an opening at the base, receiving fully, being present completely, and then letting go. This kind of vessel never fills up. This kind of vessel always has room for more. This kind of vessel can sustain a lifetime of compassion without running dry. The choice is yours, and it is made not once but again and again. In each moment when you are present with another person's pain, receive it fully. Be with it completely. Offer the gift of your presence and your care. And then, gently, lovingly, let it flow through. Take a moment now to rest in the spaciousness of an open vessel. Feel your breath moving through you, in and out, never holding, always flowing. Notice that you do not need to carry anything in this moment. You can simply be here, empty and open, at peace. Rest in this openness. It is your natural state. It is always available to you. When you are ready, we will continue our journey together. We have been exploring, in these teachings, different ways of finding peace when life becomes difficult. We have tasted honey in uncertain moments. We have learned that all things pass. We have practiced patience when action is not possible. We have discovered how to receive the sorrows of others without being weighed down by them. Each of these teachings has offered something valuable, and yet there is another dimension to this journey that we have not yet fully explored. It has to do with the future itself and with the stories we tell ourselves about what lies ahead. When we find ourselves in difficulty, the mind has a natural tendency to project forward. It imagines what will happen next. It constructs scenarios, possibilities, outcomes, and more often than not, these imaginings lean toward the troubling. We picture things going wrong. We anticipate the worst. We fill the unknown territory of tomorrow with shadows and fears. This tendency has a name. It is called worry. Worry is, in essence, looking at the future with a negative mind. It is assuming that what lies ahead will be difficult, painful, disappointing. It is living through suffering that has not yet arrived and may never arrive, as if it were already here. The Buddha observed this tendency in human beings and spoke of it with great compassion. He understood that much of our suffering comes not from what is actually happening, but from what we fear might happen. We torment ourselves with possibilities. We exhaust ourselves preparing for disasters that exist only in imagination. There is no fear for one whose mind is not filled with desires, he taught. There is no suffering for one who has completed the journey and is free from sorrow. But for those of us still on the journey, still learning, still finding our way, how do we work with this tendency to worry? How do we relate to the unknown future in a way that brings peace rather than anxiety? Before we can understand hope, we must first understand its opposite, which is not despair but expectation. Expectation is a curious thing. It is a story we tell ourselves about how things should unfold. We expect that our plans will work out. We expect that people will behave in certain ways. We expect that tomorrow will resemble today, that the patterns we know will continue, that the future will follow the script we have written for it. And when it does not, we suffer. How much of our difficulty comes not from what actually happens, but from the gap between what happens and what we expected? How often do we feel disappointed, frustrated, betrayed? Not because reality is so terrible, but because reality failed to match the picture in our minds. This is the hidden cost of expectation. Every expectation we hold is a potential source of suffering. The higher our expectations, the further we have to fall when life moves in a different direction. There is an old teaching offered with gentle humor that suggests a radical alternative. Lower your expectations. This is not pessimism. It is not resignation. It is simply a recognition that life is far more creative than our imaginations, that the future is not a predetermined script but an unwritten page, that what lies ahead is genuinely unknown, and that this unknowing, rather than being something to fear, can be a source of freedom. When we hold our expectations lightly, when we release our grip on how things should unfold, we create space for something unexpected to emerge. We become available to possibilities we could never have imagined. We stop fighting against reality and start moving with it. If worry is looking at the future with a negative mind, there is another option available to us. We might call it hope, though the word requires some care. Hope, as it is commonly understood, can sometimes be just another form of expectation. We hope for a specific outcome. We hope that things will go the way we want. And when they do not, we are disappointed. But there is a deeper kind of hope that is not attached to specific outcomes. It is simply an openness to the possibility that things might go well, that the future, being unknown, might contain gifts we cannot anticipate, that even when circumstances look difficult, something unexpected might shift. This kind of hope does not deny difficulty. It does not pretend that everything will be fine. It simply holds space for the possibility that the story is not yet finished and that we do not know how it will end. The Buddha encouraged his followers to cultivate what he called right effort, which includes the effort to generate wholesome states of mind. Hope, in this deeper sense, is a wholesome state. It opens the heart. It creates energy. It allows us to keep going when the path is hard. Worry, by contrast, is an unwholesome state. It contracts the heart. It drains energy. It keeps us stuck in suffering that has not yet arrived and may never arrive. If we are going to look toward the future at all, and it is natural that we sometimes will, then let us look with hope rather than worry. Let us hold the unknown with openness rather than fear. Let us remember that we do not know what tomorrow will bring, and that this not knowing can be a doorway to possibility rather than a prison of anxiety. Do you remember the traveler in the well, the one we met at the beginning of our journey together? The one who found honey even while suspended between a tiger and a snake, with mice gnawing at the root that held him? We left that story without an ending, because life does not always offer tidy conclusions. But there is another version of that tale, one that has been passed down alongside the original, that offers a different perspective. In this version, the traveler has tasted the honey. He has found peace in the midst of his circumstances. He is no longer fighting, no longer panicking, simply present to what is. And then, something unexpected happens. The tiger, you see, has been pacing at the edge of the well, trying to reach the traveler below. In its eagerness, in its focused desire, it leans a little too far forward. Its great paws slip on the loose earth at the rim, and before it can catch itself, the tiger tumbles into the well. It falls past the traveler, missing him by a breath, and lands heavily at the bottom, directly upon the snake. The impact is decisive. Both creatures are stilled, and the traveler, who a moment before had seemed to have no options at all, finds that he can now climb safely out of the well. He emerges into the sunlight, brushes the dirt from his clothes, and continues on his way, shaken but unharmed. All those worries, all that certainty that doom was approaching. And then, in a single unexpected moment, everything changed. This alternative ending to the story is not meant to promise that everything will always work out. Sometimes the tiger does not fall. Sometimes the difficulties we face are real and lasting. Sometimes the story ends in ways we would not have chosen. But the point of this version is simpler. It is merely this: we do not know. We do not know what will happen next. We do not know how the story will unfold. We do not know what unexpected turns lie around the next bend in the path. And because we do not know, our certainty about the future, whether positive or negative, is always misplaced. The mind that insists it knows what will happen is always, in some measure, mistaken. The future is not yet written. It remains until it becomes the present, genuinely open. This is one of the most liberating insights available to us. When we truly understand that we do not know what will happen, we are freed from the burden of pretending that we do. We can hold our fears more lightly because we recognize that they are just stories. We can hold our hopes more gently because we recognize that they too are just stories. What remains, when both fear and expectation are held lightly, is presence. The simple, profound experience of being here, now, in this moment that is actually happening, rather than lost in imagined futures that may never arrive. There is a story, told in various forms across different traditions, about a person whose life took an unexpected turn. This person had known great difficulty. Through a combination of circumstances and choices, they had found themselves in a very hard place. The details vary in different tellings, but the essence is the same. This was someone who, by any reasonable assessment, had very few prospects. The future looked bleak. The options seemed limited. It would have been easy, and perhaps understandable, to give in to despair. But something unexpected happened. A small opportunity arose. Not a grand opening, not a dramatic rescue, just a small door that had not been there before. The person, having nothing to lose, walked through it. And that small door led to another, and another, and another. Each one unexpected. Each one opening possibilities that could not have been imagined from where the person had started. Within a remarkably short time, this person found themselves in circumstances utterly different from before. Looking back, they could hardly believe the journey they had traveled. From a place of such difficulty to a place of such unexpected blessing. From darkness to light. From despair to wonder. The details of the story matter less than the pattern it reveals. Life is like this. Again and again, for those who remain open, unexpected turns appear. Doors we did not see become visible. Paths we could not imagine reveal themselves. The future, which seemed so fixed and certain from where we stood, turns out to be far more fluid than we knew. There is a quality of heart that allows us to remain open to these unexpected possibilities. It is a kind of gentle optimism, not based on certainty, but on trust. A willingness to believe that something might shift, even when we cannot see how. In the Buddhist tradition, this is related to the quality of faith, or saddha. Faith, in this context, does not mean believing in things without evidence. It means trusting the process, trusting the practice, trusting that the path, even when it is difficult, is leading somewhere worthwhile. Just as the great ocean has one taste, the taste of salt, the Buddha said, so this teaching has one taste, the taste of liberation. When we trust the process, when we hold the future with openness rather than fear, we create the conditions for liberation to unfold. Not because we have guaranteed a particular outcome, but because we have released our grip on outcomes altogether. We have stopped fighting against uncertainty and started flowing with it. This does not mean we become passive. We still act when action is called for. We still make choices, pursue goals, work toward the things that matter to us. But we do so with a lighter touch. We do so without the crushing weight of expectation. We do so knowing that our efforts are important, but that the results are not entirely in our hands. And when the unexpected comes, as it always does, we are ready to receive it. Consider for a moment how strange and unpredictable your own life has been. If you look back at the path that brought you to this moment, you will likely find it full of unexpected turns. Decisions that seemed small at the time but changed everything. Encounters you could not have planned. Circumstances that arose from nowhere and reshaped your direction. Even being here, now, listening to these words, is something you probably could not have predicted even a short while ago. Life has brought you to this moment through paths you did not design, around obstacles you did not foresee, toward a destination you could not have imagined. And yet here you are. This is not an accident. This is how life works. It is endlessly creative, ceaselessly surprising, forever unfolding in ways that exceed our capacity to predict. We are not the authors of our stories, at least not entirely. We are participants in a vast and mysterious process that we can influence but never fully control. When we understand this, really understand it, something relaxes in us. The desperate need to know what will happen begins to soften. The fear of the unknown begins to ease. We start to see uncertainty not as a threat, but as a space of possibility. We start to trust that, whatever comes, we will find a way to meet it. Not knowing is most intimate, said one Zen master. By this he meant that when we release our need to know, we become more fully present to what is actually here. We stop overlaying reality with our expectations and start receiving it directly. We become intimate with life as it is, rather than as we imagine it should be. As you move forward from this moment, as you return to the life that waits for you, consider how you might hold the future differently. When worry arises, as it will, notice it with kindness. See it for what it is, a story about something that has not happened yet and may never happen. You do not need to fight the worry or push it away. Simply recognize that it is not reality. It is imagination. And imagination, for all its power, does not determine what will come. When fear of the unknown tightens around you, breathe. Remember that the unknown has always been with you. Your entire life has been a journey into territory you could not see. And you have made it this far. You have navigated countless unexpected turns. You will navigate whatever comes next as well. And when you look toward the future, let yourself hope. Not a desperate hope that clings to particular outcomes, but a gentle hope that remains open to possibility. Trust that the story is not finished. Trust that doors you cannot see may yet open. Trust that the same creative unfolding that has brought you this far will continue to carry you forward. The Buddha taught that the cause of suffering is clinging. When we cling to how we think things should be, we suffer when they are otherwise. But when we release our grip, when we hold life with open hands, we find that we can receive whatever comes with greater grace. The future is unknown. This is not a problem to be solved. It is simply the nature of time. Let it be so. Let the not knowing be a doorway rather than a wall. Let the uncertainty be a space of possibility rather than a prison of fear. Something will turn up. It always does. Perhaps not what you expected. Perhaps not what you hoped for. But something, and you will be there to meet it. Take a moment now to rest in the openness of not knowing. Feel the gentle uncertainty of the next breath before it arrives. Notice how it comes, unbidden, different from the last, carrying you forward into a moment you could not have predicted. This is how life moves, breath by breath, moment by moment, into the beautiful unknown. Rest here, in this openness, for as long as you wish. And when you are ready, we will continue together. We have been resting in the openness of not knowing. We have seen that the future, being unwritten, holds possibilities we cannot predict. We have begun to release our grip on expectations and to hold uncertainty with a lighter touch. But there is more to explore here, because simply accepting that we do not know what will come is only the beginning. The deeper question is this: how do we orient ourselves toward that unknown? What quality of heart do we bring to the mystery of tomorrow? Two people can stand before the same uncertain future and experience it entirely differently. One feels dread. The other feels possibility. One contracts. The other opens. One is drained by thoughts of what might go wrong. The other is energized by thoughts of what might go well. The circumstances are identical, but the inner experience could not be more different. This is not a matter of personality, fixed and unchangeable. It is a matter of practice, a matter of the habits we cultivate, the thoughts we encourage, the orientation we choose to take toward what lies ahead. Tonight, let us explore what it means to hope well. Not a naive hope that denies difficulty, but a wise hope that opens us to life. Not a desperate hope that clings to outcomes, but a gentle hope that trusts the unfolding. This is an art, and like all arts, it can be learned. Before we can fully understand hope, it helps to look closely at its opposite. Worry is something most of us know intimately. It arrives uninvited, often in the quiet hours when we are trying to rest. It circles through the mind, returning again and again to the same concerns. It whispers stories about all the things that might go wrong, all the ways we might fail, all the disasters that could be waiting just around the corner. But worry is not only a mental experience. It lives in the body as well. Notice, if you will, what happens in your physical form when worry takes hold. The shoulders tighten, the jaw clenches, the breath becomes shallow, caught high in the chest. The belly hardens, the whole body contracts, as if bracing for impact, as if preparing to receive a blow. This is the posture of fear. And when we spend hours, days, years in this posture, it takes a tremendous toll. Energy that could be used for living is instead consumed by the work of holding ourselves tight. Joy that could be felt is blocked by the armor we have built around our hearts. Presence that could be available is stolen by the endless rehearsal of imagined futures. The Buddha spoke of the 5 hindrances, states of mind that obstruct clarity and peace. Among these is restlessness and worry, which he described as a kind of agitation that prevents the mind from settling into stillness. When worry has hold of us, we cannot be truly present. We cannot see clearly. We cannot rest. The mind is restless, turbulent, strong, and unyielding, says an ancient text. I consider it as difficult to control as the wind. And yet, difficult as it may be, the mind can be trained. The patterns of worry, deeply ingrained though they are, can be softened. New patterns can be established. The orientation toward the future can shift. This is the promise of practice. Before we explore what hope truly is, let us be clear about what it is not. Hope is not denial. It does not pretend that difficulties do not exist or that everything will certainly turn out well. To hope is not to close our eyes to reality or to paint over the hard parts of life with false brightness. Such pretending is fragile. It collapses the moment reality asserts itself. Hope is also not attachment to a particular outcome. When we hope desperately for one specific thing, when we tie our well-being to whether or not that thing occurs, we have not found true hope. We have only found another form of clinging. And clinging, as the Buddha taught, leads inevitably to suffering. All conditioned things are impermanent, he said. When one sees this with wisdom, one is freed from suffering. Hope that is attached to conditions is not yet free. It rises and falls with circumstances. It celebrates when things go well and collapses when they do not. It is dependent on the world arranging itself according to our preferences, which the world is under no obligation to do. True hope is something different. It is an orientation, not an attachment. A stance, not a demand. A way of meeting the unknown that remains open regardless of what unfolds. What then is this deeper hope? It is, at its essence, a trust in life itself. A willingness to believe that even when we cannot see the way forward, a way exists. A confidence that we will be able to meet whatever comes, not because we know it will be easy, but because we have faith in our own capacity to respond. This kind of hope does not depend on circumstances. It is not based on evidence that everything will go well. It is, rather, a choice about how we wish to relate to uncertainty. It is saying, I do not know what will happen, and I choose to meet that not knowing with openness rather than fear. The Buddhist tradition speaks of this as a quality of faith, but faith understood in a particular way. Not belief without evidence, but trust in the path. Trust that the practice leads somewhere worthwhile. Trust that awareness and compassion, cultivated over time, create conditions for wisdom and peace. Just as a bird needs 2 wings to fly, one teacher explained, so the spiritual life needs both wisdom and faith. Wisdom sees clearly. Faith trusts the journey. When we cultivate this kind of hope, we are not pretending the future will be easy. We are simply choosing not to suffer in advance. We are choosing to remain open to possibility. We are choosing to bring a quality of warmth and trust to the unknown, rather than a quality of dread and resistance. The beautiful thing about hope is that it can be cultivated. It is not a fixed trait that some people have and others lack. It is a capacity that grows stronger with practice, like a muscle that develops through use. How do we practice hope? One way is simply to notice when worry arises and to gently redirect the mind. Not fighting the worry, not judging ourselves for having it, but simply recognizing it as one possible response to uncertainty and choosing a different response instead. When you notice the mind spinning stories about what might go wrong, you might pause and ask yourself, what might go right? What unexpected gifts might this situation contain? What doors might open that I cannot yet see? This is not about forcing positive thinking or suppressing genuine concerns. It is simply about balance. The mind, left to its own habits, tends to focus on threats. This was useful for our ancestors, who needed to be alert to dangers. But in the modern world, this bias toward threat creates suffering that is out of proportion to actual risk. By consciously turning our attention toward possibility, we restore balance. We remind ourselves that the future contains potential for good as well as for difficulty. We open ourselves to the full range of what might unfold. Another way to practice hope is through the body. Remember how worry creates contraction, tightening, shallow breath? We can reverse this pattern consciously. When you notice worry arising, try this. Soften your shoulders. Relax your jaw. Let your breath deepen, dropping down into your belly. Open your chest. Allow your body to take the posture not of one bracing for impact, but of one open to receive. The body and mind are intimately connected. When we shift the body toward openness, the mind tends to follow. When we physically embody hope, we create the conditions for hope to arise. There is a story about a person who learned these teachings early in life and carried them through many seasons of living. This person had first encountered the practice of hope during a time of great difficulty. The details of that difficulty do not matter for our purposes. What matters is that this person, in the midst of hard circumstances, learned to orient toward the unknown with openness rather than fear. Learn to trust the process even when the path was unclear. Learn to look for possibility even when none was visible. And this practice, once learned, became a lifelong companion. Years later, when a different kind of difficulty arose, this person found that the old practice was still available, still helpful, still true. The circumstances were entirely different, but the orientation was the same. Meet the unknown with openness. Trust the unfolding. Look for the honey. And years after that, when yet another challenge appeared, the practice was there again. Deeper now, more natural, woven into the fabric of how this person moved through the world. This is how wisdom works. It is not a single insight that solves all problems forever. It is a way of being that we return to again and again across all the changing circumstances of our lives. Each time we return to it, we understand it a little more deeply. Each time we practice it, it becomes a little more natural. The person in this story faced many difficulties over a long life. Some were resolved quickly. Others lingered for years. Some ended in ways that could be called happy. Others ended in loss and letting go. But through all of it, the practice remained. The orientation toward hope remained. The willingness to meet the unknown with trust rather than fear remained. And because of this, even the difficult passages were navigable. Even the dark valleys were crossable. There was always enough light to take the next step. It takes courage to hope. This may seem strange at first. We often think of hope as a soft thing, perhaps even a weak thing. Real courage, we imagine, means facing the hard truths, acknowledging the worst possibilities, steeling ourselves for disappointment. But consider what hope actually requires. To hope is to remain open when everything in us wants to close. It is to trust when fear is screaming for us to protect ourselves. It is to look toward the future with warmth when the mind insists we should prepare for pain. It is to choose vulnerability over armor, possibility over certainty, openness over defense. This is not easy. It is, in fact, one of the most courageous things a human being can do. The Buddha sat through the night before his enlightenment, beset by visions of fear and temptation. He could have closed down. He could have fled. He could have given in to despair. Instead, he remained open. He remained present. He trusted the process, even when the process was terrifying. And in the morning, he was free. We are not all seeking the same liberation the Buddha found, but we can all learn from his example. Openness takes courage. Trust takes strength. Hope, true hope, is not a retreat from difficulty, but a way of meeting it with the fullness of our being. What does hope feel like when we cultivate it? It feels like softness in the body, like breath that moves freely, like a heart that remains open even when it is uncertain. It feels like energy, not the frantic energy of worry, which exhausts even as it agitates, but a clean, sustainable energy that supports action and rest alike. It feels like presence. When we are not lost in worried imaginings about the future, we become available to the present moment. The world around us becomes more vivid. The people in our lives become more visible. The honey that is always dripping becomes easier to taste. And it feels like freedom. Not freedom from difficulty, which no one can promise, but freedom from the unnecessary suffering we create when we torment ourselves with imagined futures. Freedom from the prison of expectation. Freedom to meet whatever comes with grace. The Buddha described the taste of his teaching as the taste of liberation. Hope, cultivated wisely, offers us a foretaste of that liberation. Not the complete freedom that comes from deep awakening, but a genuine lessening of unnecessary suffering. A real increase in peace. This is available to all of us, not through special talent or spiritual achievement, but through simple practice, through the willingness to notice when we are closing and to choose opening instead, through the courage to trust when fear is present, through the art of hoping well. As you continue on your way, remember that hope is not something you either have or lack. It is something you practice, something you cultivate, something you choose again and again in the countless small moments that make up a life. There will be times when worry arises. This is natural. This is human. The practice is not to never feel worry, but to notice it when it comes and to gently offer yourself a different possibility. There will be times when the future looks dark. This too is natural. The practice is not to deny the darkness, but to remember that you do not know what lies beyond it. To remember that life is unexpected. To remember that doors you cannot see may yet open. And there will be times when hope itself feels impossible. When the heart is too tired, the circumstances too heavy, the path too unclear. In those times, you do not need to manufacture hope through effort. You need only rest. Rest and wait, and trust that the capacity for openness will return when you are ready. Because it will return. It always does. Hope is resilient. It survives the darkest passages. It waits for us in the quiet places, ready to rise again when we are ready to receive it. This is the art of hoping well. Not a technique to be mastered, but a way of being to be practiced. A lifelong companionship with trust. A gentle, courageous choice to remain open to what life might bring. Take a moment now to rest in the warmth of hope. Feel your body softening. Feel your breath deepening. Feel your heart opening, just a little, to the unknown that lies ahead. You do not know what will come, and that is all right. You can meet it. You have always met it, and you will meet it again with whatever grace you can muster, one moment at a time. Rest here in this openness. Let hope be your companion. When you are ready, we will continue together. We have been exploring the art of hope. We have learned to orient ourselves toward the unknown with openness rather than fear. We have practiced softening the body, deepening the breath, choosing trust over dread. But there is a question that sometimes arises when we speak of meeting difficulty with grace. It is a practical question, one that the mind often poses when it hears teachings about acceptance and peace. The question is this: does acceptance mean giving up? Does peace mean stopping our efforts to improve things? If we accept our circumstances, does that mean we should not try to change them? These are important questions, and the answer is both simpler and more nuanced than we might expect. There is a time for action and a time for acceptance. There is a time to work toward change and a time to rest in what is. The wisdom lies in knowing which time we are in. There is a story told about a leader who lived during a time of great conflict in the world. This person held a position of significant responsibility. The decisions they made affected many lives. The weight of their role was considerable, and the challenges they faced were complex and often seemed impossible to resolve. During one particularly difficult period, when tensions were high and events were unfolding rapidly in a troubled region of the world, a reporter came to interview this leader. The reporter asked the question that was on everyone's mind: "What is your view of the problem?" The leader paused for a moment, then replied with words that seemed, at first, almost incomprehensible. "There is no problem." The reporter was stunned. How could there be no problem? There was conflict. There was suffering. There was uncertainty and danger. People were struggling. The situation was clearly difficult. How could anyone, let alone someone in a position of responsibility, claim there was no problem? The leader smiled gently and explained. "A problem," they said, "is something with a solution. Where there is no solution, there can be no problem. There is only a situation." This insight, offered in a moment of great pressure, carries profound wisdom for all of us. We use the word problem freely in our daily lives. We speak of relationship problems, health problems, work problems, money problems. We treat the word as if it simply means difficulty or challenge or something I don't like. But the leader in our story was pointing to something more precise. When we identify something as a problem, we are implicitly saying that there is something to be done about it. A situation, by contrast, is simply a set of circumstances. It may be pleasant or unpleasant. It may be what we wanted or not what we wanted. But it does not necessarily have a solution. It may simply need to be lived with, accepted, allowed to be what it is. The confusion between these two categories causes immense suffering. When we treat a situation as if it were a problem, we exhaust ourselves trying to solve it. We pour energy into finding solutions that do not exist. We feel like failures when our efforts do not produce change. We add the suffering of frustration and inadequacy to whatever difficulty we were already facing. And when we treat a problem as if it were merely a situation, we give up too soon. We accept what could be changed. We resign ourselves to circumstances that could be improved. We miss opportunities for genuine resolution because we have decided, prematurely, that nothing can be done. The wisdom lies in learning to tell the difference. The Buddha offered a teaching that speaks directly to this question. He spoke of the two arrows. When something painful happens to us, he said, it is like being struck by an arrow. This is the first arrow, the arrow of unavoidable suffering, a loss, an illness, a disappointment, a circumstance we did not choose and cannot change. This arrow strikes all human beings. It is part of the condition of being alive. But then, the Buddha observed, we often shoot ourselves with a second arrow. This is the arrow of resistance, of complaint, of insisting that things should be other than they are. This second arrow is optional. It is something we add to our suffering through our own reaction. When touched with a feeling of pain, the Buddha said, the ordinary person sorrows, grieves, and laments. They feel two pains, physical and mental. But the well-trained disciple, when touched with a feeling of pain, does not sorrow, grieve, or lament. They feel one pain only, physical, not mental. This teaching illuminates the distinction we are exploring. The first arrow is the situation. It is what has happened, what is real, what cannot be undone. The second arrow is what we add, which can be changed. We cannot always change our circumstances, but we can almost always change our relationship to them. How do we learn to tell the difference between what can be changed and what cannot? Between problems that have solutions and situations that require acceptance? The first step is to pause. When we encounter difficulty, the mind immediately begins to spin. It strategizes, worries, plans, resists. This activity can be useful, but it can also prevent us from seeing clearly. Before we can discern what to do, we must first be still enough to see what is actually here. The second step is to ask a simple question. Is there something I can do about this? Not, is there something I wish I could do? Or, is there something someone else could do? Or, is there something that should be done in an ideal world? But simply, is there something I, in my actual circumstances, with my actual resources, can do about this? If the answer is yes, then we have a problem. A problem in the good sense, the workable sense. Something to address. Something to give our energy to. Something that may yield to our efforts. If the answer is no, then we have a situation. Not a failure. Not a defeat. Simply a set of circumstances that, for now at least, cannot be changed by our action. A place where acceptance is the wisest response. There is a great freedom that comes when we recognize that something is a situation rather than a problem. So much of our suffering comes from trying to solve the unsolvable. From banging our heads against walls that will not move. From insisting that reality should be different than it is. This effort is exhausting. It consumes energy that could be used for other things. It keeps us in a state of constant struggle against what is. When we see clearly that something cannot be changed, at least not by us, at least not now, we can set down the burden of trying to change it. We can stop the fruitless effort. We can release the tension of resistance. This is not defeat. It is wisdom. The Serenity Prayer, cherished by many traditions, speaks to this. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. The wisdom to know the difference. This is what we are cultivating. And when we find it, something remarkable happens. Energy that was being consumed by impossible battles becomes available for other uses. Attention that was fixated on what cannot be changed becomes free to notice what can. Peace that was blocked by resistance begins to flow. We do not become passive. We do not give up on life. We simply become more skillful in how we direct our efforts. We learn to recognize where our energy can make a difference and where it cannot. We learn to act where action is possible and to rest where it is not. Let us be honest about some of the things that cannot be changed. The past cannot be changed. What has happened has happened. We can learn from it, we can make amends for it, we can allow it to transform us, but we cannot undo it. The energy we spend wishing the past were different is energy that cannot be used for the present. Other people, for the most part, cannot be changed by our will. We can influence, we can invite, we can model, we can communicate. But ultimately, other people make their own choices. The energy we spend trying to control others is usually wasted and often causes harm. The fundamental realities of existence cannot be changed. Bodies age. Things break. Relationships end. Life includes loss. No amount of resistance will alter these basic facts. The energy we spend fighting against the nature of existence is energy that could be used to live more fully within it. These are not problems. They are situations. They are the ground on which we stand, the context in which we live. When we accept them as such, we stop adding unnecessary suffering to the unavoidable difficulties of being human. And yet, let us also be clear about what can be changed. Our actions can be changed. Whatever we have done in the past, we can choose differently now. This moment, and every moment, offers a fresh opportunity to act with wisdom and kindness. Our responses can be changed. We may not control what happens to us, but we have significant influence over how we respond. The second arrow is in our hands. Our habits can be changed. The patterns of thought and behavior that shape our lives are not fixed. They were learned, and they can be unlearned. New patterns can be cultivated in their place. Our understanding can be changed. The way we see the world, the stories we tell ourselves, the beliefs we hold about what is possible, all of these can shift. And when they shift, everything shifts. These are problems in the best sense. Areas where our effort matters. Places where change is possible. Directions in which we can grow. The wisdom lies in focusing our energy here on what can actually change, rather than exhausting ourselves on what cannot. Perhaps the deepest wisdom is learning to hold both realities at once. Yes, there is much we cannot change. And yes, there is much we can. The art of living well involves accepting the first while engaging fully with the second. It involves resting in what is, while also working toward what might be. This is not contradiction. It is completion. The great teachers of the contemplative traditions have always modeled this balance. They accept reality as it is with profound equanimity, and they work tirelessly for the benefit of all beings. They hold no illusions about what cannot be changed, and they never give up on what can. The Buddha himself spent 45 years teaching after his awakening. He did not withdraw from the world into private peace. He engaged fully with the suffering around him, offering teachings, establishing communities, working for change. And yet he remained at peace throughout. He was not disturbed by what he could not change, and he was not passive about what he could. This is the integration we are invited into. A peace that does not depend on circumstances being different, and a commitment that continues to work for the good. There is a particular kind of relief that comes when we reclassify something from a problem to a situation. Imagine you have been struggling with something for a long time. Perhaps it is a relationship that does not work the way you wish it would. Perhaps it is a circumstance in your life that you have been trying unsuccessfully to change. Perhaps it is something about yourself that you have been fighting against for years. And then, one day, you see clearly, this is not a problem. There is no solution here. This is simply a situation, a reality, a part of what is. In that moment, something dissolves. The tension of trying to solve the unsolvable releases. The frustration of failing to change the unchangeable fades. The energy you were pouring into an impossible task becomes available again. You have not given up. You have woken up. You have seen clearly what is actually here, and you have adjusted your response accordingly. This is not resignation. It is liberation. And often, paradoxically, it is only when we stop trying so hard to change something that it begins to change on its own. When we release our grip, things have room to move. When we stop pushing, new possibilities can emerge. When we accept what is can sometimes transform. This is one of the mysteries of the spiritual life. Acceptance and change are not opposites. They are partners. Deep acceptance creates the conditions in which genuine change can occur. What would your life be like if you could clearly distinguish between problems and situations? Imagine carrying only the burdens that are actually yours to carry. Imagine directing your energy only toward what can actually change. Imagine the relief of setting down the weight of the impossible. This is not a fantasy. It is available to you. It requires only the willingness to look clearly at what is here, to ask honestly what can and cannot be changed, and to respond accordingly. Some things are problems. Work on them with full commitment. Some things are situations. Accept them with full grace and trust yourself to know the difference. Take a moment now to rest in this discernment. Is there something you have been treating as a problem that might actually be a situation? Something you have been trying to solve that might simply need to be accepted? Notice how your body feels when you consider this. Notice if there is any release, any softening, any relief. There is no need to figure everything out right now. Simply rest in the possibility that some of what you carry might be ready to be set down. Breathe gently. Rest here. And when you are ready, we will continue together. We have been learning to distinguish between what can be changed and what cannot. We have practiced directing our energy toward genuine problems while accepting the situations that simply are. We have discovered the freedom that comes from setting down impossible burdens. But there is another dimension to our relationship with difficulty that we have not yet fully explored. It is perhaps the most surprising teaching of all. What if difficulty is not only something to be endured? What if it is also something to be learned from? What if the hard times, the struggles, the seasons of challenge that we would never choose are actually among our greatest teachers? This is not a comfortable idea. When we are in the midst of pain, the last thing we want to hear is that our suffering might have some purpose. And we must be careful here. It is not kind to tell someone in acute distress that their pain is a gift. That is a truth that can only be discovered from the inside, in one's own time, when one is ready. But for those who have come through difficulty, for those who can look back on hard times from a place of some distance and peace, there is often a recognition. The struggles shaped us. The challenges deepened us. The pain, as unwelcome as it was, taught us things we could not have learned any other way. Let us explore this possibility gently, not as a demand that we find silver linings in every cloud, but as an invitation to consider what our difficulties might have to teach us, if we are willing to learn. There is an image in the Buddhist tradition that speaks to this teaching. It is the image of the lotus flower. The lotus is a thing of extraordinary beauty. Its petals are delicate and pure, often white or pink, opening in perfect symmetry to receive the light. It has been revered across Asian cultures for thousands of years as a symbol of spiritual awakening, of purity, of the possibility of transcendence. But here is what makes the lotus truly remarkable. It grows in mud. Not in clear water, not in pristine conditions, but in the murky, dark, nutrient-rich mud at the bottom of ponds and lakes. The lotus sends its roots deep into this mud, draws nourishment from it, and rises through the water to bloom in the open air. When it opens its petals to the sun, there is no trace of the mud from which it came. The flower is spotless, radiant, pure. This is why the lotus is such a powerful symbol. It does not bloom despite the mud. It blooms because of the mud. The very conditions that seem so unfavorable, so dark, so far from beauty, are precisely what the lotus needs to grow. Just as a lotus flower is born in water, grows in water, and rises out of water to stand above it unsoiled, the Buddha said, "So I, born in the world, raised in the world, having overcome the world, live unsoiled by the world." The mud of difficulty, the water of life, the blossom of wisdom, they are not separate. They are one continuous process of growth. There is a teaching offered by various wisdom traditions in different forms that speaks to how learning actually happens. It suggests that if everything in our lives went perfectly, if we succeeded at everything we attempted, if we never encountered failure or disappointment or struggle, we would learn very little. We would remain exactly as we are, unchallenged, unchanged, undeepened. Conversely, if everything went wrong, if we failed constantly, if we were met with nothing but difficulty and defeat, we would become discouraged. We would lose heart. We would have no foundation from which to grow. The ideal proportion, this teaching suggests, is something like 70% success and 30% struggle. Enough success to give us confidence, to provide a foundation, to remind us that we are capable, and enough struggle to keep us learning, to reveal what still needs attention, to push us beyond our current limitations. This is not a precise formula, of course. Life does not arrange itself in neat percentages, but the principle is worth considering. The 30%, the part that does not go as we hoped, is not a failure of life to provide for us. It is life providing for us in a different way. It is the curriculum we need, even when we would not have chosen it. It is the mud in which the lotus grows. When we can begin to see our difficulties this way, something shifts. We stop experiencing struggle as evidence that something has gone wrong. We start experiencing it as evidence that we are being given an opportunity to grow. When difficulty comes, when things do not go as we hoped, when we make mistakes or encounter failure, there is a simple practice that can help us extract the teaching from the experience. The practice has 3 parts: acknowledge, forgive, and learn. First, acknowledge. This means being honest about what has happened, not denying it, not minimizing it, not pretending it does not hurt. Something has occurred. It may have been painful. It may have involved loss or disappointment, or the recognition that we fell short of our own standards. Whatever it is, we begin by acknowledging it fully. Yes, this happened. Yes, it was hard. Yes, it matters. Second, forgive. This is perhaps the most crucial step, and also the most difficult. Forgive does not mean pretending that nothing wrong occurred. It does not mean bypassing accountability. It means releasing the grip of blame. We are so quick to blame when things go wrong. We blame others for their failures. We blame circumstances for being unfavorable. And perhaps most destructively, we blame ourselves, turning our pain into guilt, our disappointment into self-condemnation. Blame keeps us stuck. It locks us into the past, into the story of what went wrong and who was at fault. It generates heat, but not light. It consumes energy that could be used for moving forward. Forgiveness releases this grip. It does not say that what happened was acceptable. It simply says that we will not carry the weight of blame any longer. We will not punish others endlessly in our minds. We will not punish ourselves. We will set down the burden and move on. Third, learn. This is where the gift of difficulty reveals itself. Having acknowledged what happened and released the burden of blame, we are now free to ask, what can I learn from this? What is this experience trying to teach me? What would I do differently next time? What has been revealed that I could not have seen otherwise? Learning is not about assigning fault. It is about growing wiser. It is about extracting the nutrients from the mud so that something beautiful can bloom. When we move through difficulty in this way, acknowledging, forgiving, and learning, we transform our relationship to struggle. It becomes not just something to be survived, but something to be mined for wisdom. There is a way of looking at difficulty that sees it as a teacher in disguise. This is not to say that we should seek out suffering or that pain is inherently good. The Buddha was clear that suffering is to be understood and ultimately released, not celebrated or pursued. But within the suffering that comes to us unbidden, there are often teachings that we could not receive any other way. Consider what difficulty teaches. It teaches humility. When we struggle, when we fail, when we come face to face with our own limitations, the illusion of control begins to crack. We learn that we are not as powerful as we thought. We learn that we need others. We learn that we are part of something much larger than ourselves. It teaches compassion. When we have known pain, we can recognize it in others. When we have struggled, we understand what struggling feels like. Our own difficulties become a bridge to the difficulties of others, opening our hearts in ways that success never could. It teaches patience. When we cannot fix something immediately, when we must wait for change to unfold in its own time, we learn to be present with what is. We learn that not everything happens on our schedule. We learn to trust the process, even when we cannot see the destination. It teaches resilience. Each difficulty we survive shows us that we can survive. Each challenge we navigate adds to our store of confidence. we discover capacities we did not know we had. We learn that we are stronger than we thought. It teaches wisdom. The easy path teaches little. It is the hard path, the path that requires us to pay attention, to adapt, to grow, that deepens our understanding. Wisdom is not accumulated in comfort. It is forged in the fire of challenge. These are not small gifts. They are among the most valuable qualities a human being can possess. And they are often given to us through difficulty, by no other means. There is a beautiful verse often shared in times of hardship that says, "There is a crack in everything. That is how the light gets in." This image speaks to something true about the human experience. It is often through our cracks, our wounds, our places of vulnerability that something luminous enters. The person who has never been broken may remain forever closed. The person who has been cracked open has the possibility of receiving a deeper light. In the Japanese tradition, there is an art form called kintsugi. When a piece of pottery breaks, instead of discarding it or hiding the damage, the artisan repairs it with gold. The cracks become visible, even celebrated. The piece is not considered ruined by its breaking. It is considered made more beautiful, more valuable, more interesting. What if we could see ourselves this way? What if our cracks, our breaks, our places of wounding were not flaws to be hidden but seams of gold to be honored? This does not mean we should seek to be broken. It does not mean that pain is pleasant or that we should pretend it does not hurt. But it suggests that something precious can come through our wounded places, that our struggles can become sources of beauty and wisdom, that we are not diminished by our difficulties but can be, if we allow it, deepened by them. Take a moment to consider what you have already survived. Whatever your age, whatever your circumstances, you have almost certainly passed through times of difficulty. There have been losses, disappointments, challenges that seemed, at the time, almost too much to bear. There have been moments when you did not know how you would continue. And yet here you are. You continued. You found a way through. You survived. This is not nothing. This is, in fact, remarkable. The simple fact of your presence here, listening to these words, is evidence of a resilience that has been tested and has held. What have those experiences taught you? What wisdom have you gained that you could not have gained any other way? What compassion has been opened in you through your own suffering? What humility, what patience, what strength? You may not feel particularly wise or compassionate or strong. We rarely see these qualities clearly in ourselves, but they are there, woven into you through all you have experienced. The mud has nourished the lotus. The cracks have let the light in. The gold is already filling your broken places, whether you can see it or not. There is a practice, cultivated by some practitioners, of welcoming difficulty when it arrives. This does not mean enjoying pain or seeking out suffering. It simply means shifting our relationship to the inevitable struggles that come to every life. Instead of meeting difficulty with pure resistance, we might meet it with a kind of open curiosity. What have you come to teach me? We might ask. What am I being invited to learn? This is not easy. It is, in fact, one of the most advanced practices on the path. When we are in pain, our instinct is to resist, to fight, to push the pain away. Welcoming it requires a complete reversal of this instinct. but those who have cultivated this capacity report that it transforms their experience of difficulty. The suffering may still be present, but it is held differently. There is space around it. There is even, sometimes, a kind of gratitude for the teaching being offered. The Buddha himself practiced this. On the night of his awakening, when Mara, the tempter, arose to challenge him with fear and desire, the Buddha did not fight. He simply touched the earth and remained present. He met the challenge with awareness rather than resistance. And in that meeting, the challenge was transformed into liberation. We may not face such dramatic tests, but in our own small ways, each of us is given opportunities to meet difficulty with openness rather than resistance. Each time we do, we grow a little wiser, a little more free. Life is, in many ways, a school. We are all enrolled, whether we chose to be or not. And the curriculum is largely made up of experiences we would not have selected. This is not a punishment. It is simply how learning works. Growth happens at the edges of our comfort, not at the center. Wisdom is forged in the fire, not in the shade. The lessons we most need are often delivered in the packaging we least prefer. But we have a choice in how we meet this curriculum. We can resist it, resenting each difficult lesson, fighting against the process, wasting our energy on wishing things were otherwise. Or we can accept it, bringing to each experience a willingness to learn, an openness to growth, a trust that even the hard parts have something to offer. The second way is not easier in the short term. It requires letting go of our preferences, our expectations, our sense of how things should be. But in the long term, it leads to a very different kind of life. A life of deepening rather than hardening. A life of wisdom rather than bitterness. A life that becomes like the lotus, more beautiful for the mud it has grown through. Take a moment now to rest with this teaching. Consider the difficulties you have known, not to relive them, not to dwell in their pain, but simply to acknowledge them as part of your path. What have they given you? What wisdom has emerged from the struggle? What compassion has been opened? What strength has been forged? You do not need to have answers. Simply hold the questions gently and trust that the learning continues in its own time, in its own way. Breathe softly. Rest here. And when you are ready, we will continue together. We have traveled far together through these teachings. We began with honey dripping in darkness, a traveler discovering sweetness in the midst of uncertainty. We learned that peace does not depend on circumstances being perfect. We learned that even when life closes in from all sides, something sweet remains available to those who know how to receive it. We explored the wisdom of a simple ring, inscribed with 4 words that change everything. This too will pass. We discovered that impermanence, far from being a source of despair, can be our greatest comfort in hard times and our greatest teacher in good ones. We sat with travelers surrounded in the wilderness, learning the courage of stillness, the wisdom of waiting, the patience to let situations change in their own time. We discovered that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is nothing at all. We became vessels with openings at the bottom, learning to receive the sorrows of others without being weighed down, to offer presence without accumulating burden, to care deeply while remaining at peace. We released our grip on expectations and opened ourselves to the unexpected nature of life. We learned that the future is not written, that worry is optional, that hope is a practice we can cultivate. We distinguished between problems and situations, learning where to direct our energy and where to rest in acceptance. We discovered the freedom that comes from setting down impossible burdens. And we began to see difficulty itself as a teacher, the mud from which the lotus blooms, the curriculum through which wisdom is forged. These teachings are now part of you. They have entered through your listening, settled into your awareness, planted seeds that will continue to grow long after these words have faded. But this is not an ending. It is, in many ways, a beginning. There is a moment in every journey when we must return home. We have been resting here together in a space of reflection, a space set apart from the demands and distractions of ordinary life. It has been a kind of refuge, a place to breathe, to listen, to allow wisdom to settle into us. But life awaits. The responsibilities, the relationships, the challenges and joys of daily existence have not disappeared while we have been here. They are waiting for us, patient and persistent, ready to receive us back. This return can sometimes feel like a loss. The peace we found in reflection seems fragile, easily disrupted by the first difficulty we encounter. The insights that felt so clear begin to fade as the noise of life rises around us. We may wonder if anything has really changed at all. This is natural. This is part of the path. The Buddha spoke of this when he described the journey of practice. It is not a single leap from confusion to clarity. It is a gradual process, a slow transformation that happens through countless small moments of remembering, forgetting, and remembering again. Just as the ocean has a gradual shelf, a gradual slope, a gradual inclination, he said, with a sudden drop-off only after a long stretch, so too this teaching has a gradual training, a gradual practice, a gradual progress. We are not expected to be transformed all at once. We are invited to practice, to return, to keep walking the path, one step at a time. The most important skill on the spiritual path may simply be the art of remembering. We hear a teaching, it resonates, it makes sense. And then, almost immediately, we forget. We return to our habitual patterns, our familiar reactions, our old ways of meeting the world. The wisdom that seemed so clear fades into the background, replaced by the urgency of whatever is happening right now. This is not failure. This is how the human mind works. We are creatures of habit, shaped by years of conditioning. The patterns we have developed did not form overnight, and they will not dissolve overnight either. The practice is simply to remember, again and again, as many times as necessary. When worry arises and you find yourself lost in stories about the future, remember, you have learned another way. You have tasted hope. You know how to soften the body, deepen the breath, and meet uncertainty with openness. When difficulty comes and you feel yourself contracting, remember, this too will pass. You have a ring of wisdom, even if it is invisible. The hard times are not permanent. They are weather. They are seasons. They will change. When you are overwhelmed and cannot see any way forward, remember, you can sit down and have a cup of tea. You can wait for the gap to appear. You do not have to solve everything right now. When you find yourself filled with the sorrows you have received from others, remember, you can be a vessel with an opening at the bottom. You can let what has come in flow through. You do not have to carry it all. When something unexpected happens, when life takes a turn you did not anticipate, remember, this is how life is. The unexpected is not an error. It is the nature of existence. You can meet it with curiosity rather than fear. When you are struggling to change something that will not change, remember, perhaps it is not a problem. Perhaps it is a situation. Perhaps the freedom you seek lies not in solving but in accepting. And when difficulty has taught you something, when you look back and see how struggle has deepened you, remember, the lotus grows in mud. The cracks let the light in. Your wounds may become your greatest sources of wisdom. This remembering is the practice, not perfection, not constant clarity, just the willingness to return again and again to what you know to be true. As you continue on your path, please remember to be gentle with yourself. You will forget. You will fall back into old patterns. You will react in ways you wish you had not. You will have days when the teachings seem very far away, when peace feels impossible, when everything you have learned seems to have vanished. This is not failure. This is being human. The Buddha compared the spiritual path to the ocean. It is vast. It takes time to cross. There are storms and calms, progress and setbacks, times of clear sailing and times of being utterly lost. All of this is part of the journey. What matters is not that you never struggle. What matters is that you keep going, that you return to the practice when you have strayed, that you forgive yourself for forgetting and begin again with a willing heart. A jug fills drop by drop, the Buddha said. Each moment of practice, each time you remember, each small act of awareness adds something. It may not seem like much, but over time, drop by drop, the jug fills. Over time, the path is walked. Over time, transformation occurs. Be patient with yourself. Be kind to yourself. Treat yourself with the same compassion you would offer a dear friend who is struggling. You are doing the best you can. That is enough. You do not walk this path alone. Throughout history, countless beings have traveled this same road. They have faced the same struggles, asked the same questions, sought the same peace. Some of them left teachings that have been passed down through generations, wisdom that we have been exploring together in these hours. Others walked quietly, leaving no record, but contributing to the great river of practice that flows through time. You are part of this river. When you practice, when you remember, when you choose awareness over habit, you are joining a lineage that stretches back thousands of years and forward into generations yet to come. You are not alone, and in your own life there may be others who walk alongside you, friends who share your interest in these teachings, family members who support your growth, teachers, whether in person or through books and recordings, who offer guidance along the way. Treasure these companions. The path is easier when we walk it together. The forgetting is less complete when others help us remember. The practice deepens when it is shared. The Buddha established a community, a sangha, for exactly this reason. He knew that awakening is not a solitary achievement. It happens in relationship, in the mutual support of those who are walking the same direction. You may not have a formal community, but you have this, the connection we have shared through these words, the knowing that others are listening to these same teachings, the invisible web of practice that links all who seek wisdom and peace. You are part of something larger than yourself. Let that be a comfort on the days when the path feels lonely. The words we have shared will remain available to you. In times of struggle, you might return to the story of the traveler and the honey. Let it remind you that sweetness is always present, waiting to be tasted. In times of change, you might return to the wisdom of the ring. Let it remind you that nothing lasts forever, neither the difficult nor the beautiful. In times of overwhelm, you might return to the story of the tea. Let it remind you that stillness is sometimes the bravest response, and that gaps appear for those who know how to wait. In times of compassion fatigue, you might return to the teaching of the open vessel. Let it remind you that you can care without carrying, receive without retaining, help without depleting yourself. In times of worry, you might return to the art of hoping well. Let it remind you that you have a choice in how you meet the unknown. In times of frustration, you might return to the distinction between problems and situations. Let it remind you to direct your energy wisely. And in times of growth, you might return to the teaching of the lotus. Let it remind you that difficulty is not your enemy. It is, in its own strange way, your ally. These teachings are yours now. They live in you. They will arise when you need them, often unbidden, surfacing at just the right moment to offer the guidance you seek. Trust this. Trust yourself. Trust the practice. In one sense, the spiritual path has a destination. The Buddha spoke of Nibbana, the complete liberation from suffering, the unconditioned peace that lies beyond all the changing conditions of existence. This is the ultimate goal, the far shore toward which all practice points. But in another sense, the path has no end. It is not a journey from here to there, but a way of being here more fully. It is not something we complete, but something we practice endlessly in each new moment that arises. Every moment offers an opportunity to practice. Every breath is a chance to return to presence. Every difficulty is an invitation to remember what we know. Every joy is a chance to taste the honey. There is no arriving, not really. There is only the walking, the placing of one foot in front of the other, the returning again and again to awareness, the gradual, patient, drop-by-drop filling of the jug. This may sound daunting. An endless path, a practice that never completes. But there is another way to see it. It means that wherever you are on the path. It means that whatever has happened, you can begin again. It means that no mistake is final, no wandering is permanent, no forgetting lasts forever. The path is always here, waiting for you to return. And each time you return, you are a little different, a little wiser, a little more at peace. The path may be endless, but you are not the same person who began walking it. You are changing, growing, deepening, even when you cannot see it. The drops are filling the jug. The lotus is rising through the water. Trust the process. Trust the path. Trust yourself. As you prepare to return to your life, allow me to offer a blessing. May you taste the honey that is always present, even in the darkest times. May you hold the wisdom that all things pass, and find in that wisdom both comfort and presence. May you know when to act and when to rest, when to strive and when to accept. May you care for others without losing yourself, receiving their sorrows and letting them flow through. May you meet the unknown with hope rather than fear, trusting in possibilities you cannot yet see. May your difficulties become your teachers, and may you find gold in your broken places. May you be gentle with yourself, patient with your forgetting, and quick to begin again. And may you always remember that you are not alone. The path has been walked by countless beings before you. It is being walked by countless beings alongside you. And it will be walked by countless beings after you are gone. You are part of something vast and beautiful. You are part of the great river of awakening that flows through time. You are part of the endless, patient, luminous work of bringing more peace into the world. This is your birthright. This is your calling. This is your path. Walk it well. Take a moment now to rest in the fullness of all we have shared. Feel the teachings settling into you, finding their place, becoming part of who you are. You do not need to hold them tightly. They are already woven into you. They will be there when you need them. Breathe gently. Feel your body, here, now, alive. Feel the mystery of being present in this moment, at the end of one journey and the beginning of another. Rest here as long as you wish. And when you are ready, we will close this time together with a few final words. And so our journey together comes to a close. We have traveled through ancient stories and timeless wisdom. We have learned that peace does not depend on the absence of difficulty, but on the presence of awareness. We have discovered that even in the darkest well, honey drips for those who remember to taste it. These teachings are simple. They have always been simple. The Buddha did not offer complicated philosophies or elaborate techniques.